Are they separate entities, or is that Lucifer disguising himself? Is Lucifer Baal, pretty much?
Well, I argue that Lucifer is Baal, and it's mainly because of the connections we see in the Bible. In Isaiah 14, Lucifer, which is really kind of a mistranslation. The Hebrew is Halel ben Shachar, which means light bringer.
Disguising himself. Is Lucifer Baal, pretty much?
Well, I argue that Lucifer is Baal, and it's mainly because of the connections we see in the Bible. In Isaiah 14, Lucifer, which is really kind of a mistranslation. The Hebrew is Halel ben Shachar, which means light bringer, son of the dawn. Shachar was actually a deity in the Canaanite religion, dawn. But when Jerome translated the Bible into the Latin, the Vulgate translation, he used the Roman, or the Latin equivalent of light bringer, lux ferus, light bringer. And we English speakers have just sort of adopted that as a personal name, Lucifer. Well, again, it really just means light bringer. But Isaiah 14 says that what he was trying to do was to establish his mount of assembly in the heights of the north, the sides of the north, the uttermost north. There are a few English translations that actually get it right. This actually points back to the mountain that was sacred to the storm god, Baal. Or Hadad was his proper name. Baal just means Lord, which sort of became a proper name over time. But it was also considered sacred to the storm gods of the Hurrians, called Teshub, the storm god of the Hittites, called Tarhuns, the storm god of the Greeks, called Zeus, actually fought a major battle there against the god of chaos, Typhon, at Mount Zephon. Well, the phrase in Isaiah 14, translated sides of the north, heights of the north, uttermost north, Yarkate Zephon, is only used 3 times in the Bible. There, Psalm 48, where Mount Zephon was compared to Mount Zion. It's kind of some wordplay, actually. Har Zephon, Heart Zion. But the only other place it's used is Ezekiel 38 and 39. You can tell I don't speak Hebrew. Ezekiel 38 and 39, and Ezekiel identifies that as the place from which Gog of Magog will bring his troops. You will come from the uttermost north. Yeah, you will come from Yarkate Zephon, Mount Zephon. Now, here's an interesting thing. Baal, the storm god, who was the chief god, the king of the gods, called a son of El in the Canaanite religion, but he became the king of the gods by defeating the god of death and defeating the god of the sea. Similar to the tension in Greek mythology, by the way, between the storm god Zeus, the god of the sea, Poseidon, and the god of death, Hades. In Canaanite religion, Baal had to defeat the god of death, Mot, and the god of the sea, called Yam, in order to become the king of the gods. The Greeks got their religion from the Canaanites. Well, Amorites, really, but... So anyway, that mountain, Mount Zephon, was so important to the Hebrews because it was so important to their neighbors in Canaan that Zephon became the word for the compass point north. In every other Semitic language from the ancient Near East, the word for north is Simal. But in Hebrew, it's Zephon. That's how important that was because of its relationship to that God. So, in the New Testament, Jesus, confronted by the Pharisees, says, he's casting out demons by the power of Beelzebul, which means Baal the prince. Baal the prince of demons, I guess. Jesus also, in Revelation 2, in the letter to the church at Pergamum, says, I know where you live. It's where Satan's seat. It's where Satan dwells. Satan's seat in Pergamum. Well, that was the great altar of Zeus, who, like Baal, was a storm god. So Satan to Jesus, and Jesus, by the way, in replying to the Pharisees, connected Beelzebul, Baal the prince, to Satan. So Jesus identified the storm god as Satan. Isaiah 14, storm god Lucifer. So yes, Lucifer is Baal, is Satan. It's all connected. Now, how do we figure out which gods and which cultures are the same from one to one? How does Shakespeare put it? That way madness lies. They lie. We don't know. I am under the opinion that the ancient goddess of sex and war, Ishtar, Inanna, kind of split off her personality by the time of the Bible, because to the Canaanites of Gilbert and the Canaanites who lived around, and by the way, for clarification, Canaanite is just a geographical designation like Babylonian. The Babylonian Empire of Hammurabi the Great was founded by Amorites. They were Amorites. The Canaanites who lived in Canaan, they were Amorites. It's like saying I'm a Chicagoite because I was born there. No, I'm German, Swedish, Welsh, English.
So the Amorites were the ones who lived directly, timeline speaking, it goes
From about 2000, around the year 2000 BC, the Amorites somehow emerged from a period of chaos in the ancient Near East, which is what we would call today Iraq, Syria, Jordan, Lebanon, Israel. The Amorites came out with Amorite kingdoms in control of all of that. Everything from what is now Iraq to northern Egypt. In fact, when the Israelites were in Egypt, they weren't Egyptian kings. They were under the rule of Amorites. Amorite names. In fact, there was actually a pharaoh during that period whose name was Jacob. Yeah. Yaqub Har, Jacob of the mountain. They don't teach you that. And the gods that they worshipped were Semitic gods. Baal, Astarte, Ishtar, Resheph, the god of plagues and archers and chariot warriors, who, and I didn't even mention this today, is Apollo of the Greeks and Romans. The gatekeeper of the underworld. Oh yeah, Revelation 9. He's the king of those in the abyss. Opens and lets them out. It's all connected. So the Amorites had this belief. They were the ones who worshiped their ancestors. They were the ones who worshiped the Rephaim and summoned them through necromancy rituals. And God, when he confirmed his covenant with Abraham, said your descendants are going to go to Egypt. They'll come back in what did he say, the fourth generation, because the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. He tied it to the iniquity of the Amorites. Guess what? The Amorites were also the forefathers of the Phoenicians, of the Arameans, who caused so much trouble after the time of David for Israel and for Judah. The Arabs. And the gods of the Amorites, who were still worshipped in Arabia into the Christian era, like the moon god, Sin, the war god, and this is what I was getting to with Ishtar and Astarte, split off a male aspect. So during the time of the judges, when Astarte, the goddess of sex, was worshipped, her male aspect, Athtar, the war god, was likewise worshipped. The gods of the Amorites continued to be worshipped in Arabia, and I argue in my forthcoming book that they formed a coalition that emerged from Arabia in the 7th century as a religion that will be the world's largest within the next 50 years.
Amazing. All right, well, you just answered another couple more of my questions over here. Is Zeus Lucifer? All right, so.
Yes, Zeus is Lucifer. And Thor.
That's amazing.
Which is sad because we really like the Thor movies.
Well,
but when you're watching Thor on the screen, he's the storm god, which means, okay, well, it's Baal. That's Satan.
It's about those Marvel movies. Yeah, I used to love those, but something ever since I became Christian,
Yeah.
it's just something inside of me is like.
And isn't it interesting the way Hollywood is beating this drum about the return of the Titans? Thanos, the Mad Titan, Sam Worthington, who was in Clash of the Titans and Wrath of the Titans, starred in a movie last year, went straight to Netflix called The Titan.
Yep.
Yeah, and the new Godzilla movie, where they have rebranded them. They're no longer Mutos, which is what, monsters of unusual size or whatever.
Yeah.
They rebranded them as the Titans, the original and rightful rulers of Earth.
And when I saw that trailer, I actually enjoyed the first Godzilla movie.
Oh, so did I.
I thought it was great. I was a manager at the theater at the time. And it was a great time. And when I saw the trailer for the next one, I was excited for like 10 seconds. And I was like, wait a minute, what are they trying to do here?
I'm wanting to watch it because I just love me a good monster movie. But it's also for the programming because, again, presenting them as Titans, the original and rightful rulers of the Earth. The Titans are still around. In fact, I argue in my book, Last Clash of the Titans, that they are somehow still influencing things on this Earth, even though they are currently chained in the abyss. Revelation 9 says they're going to get out for 5.5 months at the end.
When they come back, the Nephilim, spirits of the dead Nephilim come back in the end times.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe they're going to be back in their physical bodies as giants, or their spirit bodies possessing humans through like Mark of the Beast technology?
When the Nephilim return, and we understand that the Nephilim, the spirits of the Nephilim that were destroyed in the days of Noah, in the flood, were barred entrance into the afterlife, into the netherworld, into heaven, basically condemned to roam the earth. That was the belief of the early church. That was the belief of the Jews in the time of Jesus and through all the Old Testament period. It wasn't until Augustine in about the 5th century that belief went away. He also basically turned the church away from believing that the Nephilim had been created at all. Ezekiel, though, saw it. And this is the thing. God bless people like L.A. Marzulli have been, teaching this for a long time. He's right. The Nephilim are returning. Where I differ with L.A., and I've got to give him credit, because without him and his book Nephilim, which was a novel that got me down this path, I wouldn't be here right now. But I think Ezekiel 39 is a clue. But you got to understand the worldview of the prophets to understand what Ezekiel was writing. In Ezekiel 39, he's writing about the culmination of the war of Gog and Magog. And Gog was the Old Testament Antichrist figure. Okay? He is the figure that John in the book of Revelation calls the Antichrist. That is the same war that culminates with the Battle of Armageddon, which is fought for the Har Moed, God's Mount of Assembly, which is Zion, the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. Ezekiel says, God said that he will prepare a place in Israel for burial of Magog, the forces of Magog. The valley of the travelers east of the sea refers to east of the Dead Sea, and it will block the travelers. The key is understanding that travelers in the Old Testament concept, the Old Testament world, were spirits that would travel or cross over from one plane of existence to another. In other words, the realm of the dead to the land of the living. And the places where he identifies east of the Dead Sea are places that during the Exodus, the stations of the Exodus, refer to a couple of places that are named for these interactions with the spirit realm. One of the stops in the Exodus, one of the stations of the Exodus is called Ovoth, which means spirits of the dead. It's based on a root word Ov, which means medium. The medium of Endor that Saul went to see was the Ov of Endor. In fact, one of the giants killed by David's men, Ishbi, they condensed the word. Ishbi Benab is how it looks to us in English. Ishbi Ben Ov. Ishbi, son of the necromancer, son of the medium. And he was of the descendants of the Rapha, the sons of the Rephaim. The Rephaim were these spirits that the Amorites, the Canaanites, believed were the spirits of the mighty men who were of old, the ancestors of their kings. They were called in Canaanite texts, called by scholars the Rephaim texts, written about the time of the Judges, where these Rephaim were summoned through necromancy rituals to the tabernacle of El, Mount Hermon, where El, they believed, would speak words of revivification to resurrect these spirits that were called warriors of Baal. And in these texts, they're described as warriors. They mount their chariots and they travel first one day and then another. And at dawn of the third day, they arrive to be resurrected. Like Jesus, who went down and preached and proclaimed to the spirits in prison until dawn of the third day, when he arrived, except that he really was resurrected. And Ezekiel, in Ezekiel 39, says, this is where these travelers will be buried. Another one of the stops on in fact, the mountain where Moses was led by God to get his only view of the Holy Land, the Promised Land. Climb this mountain of the Avarim. In Hebrew, that means travelers. Mount Nebo is the mountain of the travelers. It's right there across from Jericho in the plains of Moab. And that's where this demonic army will fall. Now, I believe that the Nephilim will return. I believe they're going to be the demons who possess a human army. I think by this point, the restrainer will have been removed. The church will be removed. So I pray I'm right, that we won't be here for that day, because that's the day of Armageddon.